Hey everyone, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Podcast for June 29th, 2021. Uh, as always, I'm Tom's Hardware Editor-in-Chief, Abram Pelch. I'm joined by Associate Editor Les Pounder, Raspberry Pi expert Ash Puckett, and our very special guest, Chris Stevens of HotSparkLab, and his robot.
Good evening / morning / afternoon, awesome people of this planet. Thank you kindly for having us here.
That is amazing. And is your robot? So that's your robot, HotSpark. Is he supposed to sound like Matt Berry?
He is. He's supposed to have a nice British accent, like much of the really nice bots these days, like Jarvis from Marvel and a few others out there.
Yeah, he sounds a lot like Matt Berry from the IT Crowd,
Awesome.
and What We Do in the Shadows. So can you tell us, before you tell us a little bit about HotSpark, tell us a bit about yourself. What is HotSparkLab and what do you do there?
Yeah, so my name is Chris, and of course this is HotSpark. And HotSparkLab is a little bit of an experiment for the winter. We kind of had a rough winter. A lot of people did, and I wanted to do something. I started a new job with this company called BombBomb, and we specialize in rehumanizing communication. And one of the things that I really struggled with when I started there was being comfortable on video. So I started this stream to just have some fun and also get up to date with a lot of the technical things I do at work. So I'm a web developer by trade, and I just wanted to combine all that stuff and just inspire my daughter, who we've been spending a lot of time at home. So she's been having a lot of inspiration to do more crafting and making of things as a result.
Oh wow, that's neat. How old is your daughter?
She's 4. So when this thing first went out, the first question she asked was, could we take this outside and play football with it? And of course, that not this one. I think we need to call it Boston Dynamics and see if we can borrow one of their bots for that. But yeah, just it's been fun in that regard.
So she's thinking big.
That's great. As soon as my son sees this episode, because he likes to watch them, he will ask me how we can make a robot just like yours.
Okay.
So tell us about HotSpark. What, how is he made, and what can he do?
Well, so HotSpark is he's an animatronic, and he's my co-host. He's my conversation starter of sorts during the stream. And during the stream, I'm covering like games that are unfinished, and just having some nice clunky conversation is fun. So, people are coming on the stream, the bot will greet them, and if something else happens, I also have this control panel here. Of course, this is my daughter's tablet, I'm borrowing it. But, control panel for it to say different things. So, for example, he does a few robot jokes.
Want to hear a robot joke?
Of course.
Why did the robot go back to school? Its skills were rusty.
So, lots of random things like that. And, HotSpark, maybe you can tell us, what is your purpose on this show?
Well, let me ask you this. How many software engineers does it take to change a light bulb? 0? That's a hardware problem. That's why I'm here, of course.
Okay. So, basically, added entertainment, a special feature to kind of draw people in, so we can have, good conversations in general. Kind of like the stream here. You have chat that people can type in right now. This gives us it's a way to kind of draw people in and connect and just have some fun. I do have a little bit of a diagram of how he works if you're interested.
Yes, always.
All right. Yeah, let's switch over to the how it works view. So yeah, he's a Raspberry Pi 4, and with a lot of extra things attached. So it's running a Node.js server, and also a Python server separately. So it's kind of a Docker setup deployed with Balena Cloud. So if Balena is a way to kind of securely deploy things to remote devices and monitor them. So the Python portion is what connects to all the hardware. All of the I think there's 5 servos, a bunch of NeoPixels, and just getting all that coordinated. That happens in Python because that's what all the cool stuff is done in the Adafruit world. And on the Node side, though, it's connecting with the stream. So the audio you hear, I guess it's up in this direction, it delivers a web page which plays the audio, and that audio goes back and triggers all the animated things, so mouth movements, that kind of thing. It's also pulling from Amazon Web Services, so that's where the wonderful voice is coming from, and just
look at this chart. It's just stunning, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So yeah, it pulls in. It all goes through Amazon IoT Core. So there's this MQTT communication going back and forth from the bot to Amazon Web Services, and from there, it gets sent to Poly, which is where the voice comes from, and Lex, which is when people are chatting, it determines what they're saying and can respond to some things. So some obvious requests, it will understand and respond in that way.
So chatting on Twitch, you mean?
Yeah. So like the chat channel in this YouTube feed you're doing,
right?
There's that Twitch chat feed, and it's listening to that for people responding. Hey, I want to hear a joke. Do you know R2D2? Those types of questions, and some of the more entertaining things. Knows the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, and those kinds of answers, and will respond in that way.
So it primarily responds autonomously. How much of it do you have to control using the tablet?
It's a combination. So when it's really slow, which is most of the time with me because I'm just a developer, I'm not like I don't call myself a professional streamer. I use it as a conversation starter. So I'll hit the icebreaker button and we'll start a thing, and we'll just do the manual. We'll do it manually this way, through these controls. Through the chat, when it gets really busy, that's when things kind of come to life a little bit, and we'll have just a little back and forth banter going back and forth pretty consistently, and it seems to get people excited. And then when things kind of slow down a bit, we could kind of get a little bit more into storytelling and trying to figure out what's going on, kind of going back and forth from those two modes.
So how many possible responses does HotSpark have?
Gosh, I'd really like to have a writer write these things, but I think it knows about 30 different questions, and it has a random response for each one of those. So there's about 200 things, it says, and it also recently just learned a musical jig. I don't know if you'd like to hear a musical jig.
Oh, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, well, let's see here.
Yes, I've been working on my music routines. Would you like to hear my latest work?
Yeah.
All right.
All right, let's give this a shot. Throat clear. La la la. Ambience. Lighting. Tuning. The map. Oh, how much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood? If it was near trees it would chuck what it sees and chuck as much as it could. How much wood could a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck was in space? If there were no trees it would be a breeze and a chuck would spin in place.
Bravo, that was great. I have a question. So you just had this beautiful backdrop of a forest. Can you talk a little bit about your camera setup and how you're integrating him visually into your streams?
Yeah, let me go into desktop view here. So welcome to the Vortex. So I'm using Open Broadcaster software to showcase everything. and I have different scenes. So there's the different same elements in each of the scenes. For example, my face and the robot's face, different features, but I have different scenes for different types of things. So one example is when we're just getting started, I may start in, like, say, a restaurant scene like this.
Oh.
So, the pay's not the best here, but we can, have some fun and just talk about, what we're going to do for the day, and we usually, leave the restaurant or whatever we're in to go do something else. Here's one other scene. Okay, I'm in a noodle place now.
Oh, hey.
Yeah, so lots of different scenes, just to kind of keep it interesting. Here's another one. You go to the burrito bar, get your burrito over here.
This is making me hungry. I think I'm gonna have to go get something to eat after this.
Is he in a green screen or in front of a green screen? And what kind of camera are you using?
Yeah, so HotSpark has a green screen. I have a green screen in the back. So I'm using a Raspberry Pi high quality camera for HotSpark. I'm using a regular webcam for me.
Ready.
And he's listening to voice commands. I could say also just a quick demo. He's listening to my voice too. Prepare for takeoff. Nice.
Please remain seated while we take off, or don't. It's your life.
So,
do you come up with the jokes?
Most of the random banter I come up with. And we're going to stop voice commands so he doesn't say weird things like the map. So yeah, I try to come up with all these different responses for different situations in the game. Like, we're about to go fly somewhere. Okay, prepare for takeoff. We're about to land. So yeah, I have different banter I created for these different things. Just the more content we can create in there, when you're streaming, you don't want to bore people to death. And I'm a guy that relies on a lot of props because I don't have a lot of good things to say normally. I'm an introvert. So, I try to write in all the content I can ahead of time, and just try to keep it moving as I go. Most of the time it works pretty good, except for those really quiet days, which happens. So when you're first starting in Twitch, like for the first 8 months even, it's pretty quiet. It's like you're talking to an answering machine, which was good for me because I needed that practice in my day job where we're really trying to communicate and connect with people through video messaging. So that really helped me in that regard. I can talk to you today pretty well, I feel. But yeah, it's just kind of, you just try to pack as much in as much as you can.
So can you talk a little bit about the hardware? So I really like what you've done with the expressions on this robot. I've never seen expressions on a robot done that way before by using NeoPixel eyebrows and mouth. How did you come up with that method of expression?
I crafted this thing with popsicle sticks, hobby wire, and hot glue. I had no idea how to make an enclosure when I started this project. So I was thinking, okay, it's going to be bare bones. Here's the pie. How am I going to stick a mouth here? Okay, popsicle sticks over here. How am I going to get the eyes? I could, maybe create a little V shape and have servos and just hot glue the NeoPixels to the servos. And that was a little disastrous for a while because I wired the servos wrong and burn out 2 servos in the process. And then before I had the servo controller and added more and more stuff in there, it was getting really complex. And Pis by themselves aren't really good at controlling servos, and it started really getting jittery and started throwing parts off. Like, it just, so it's kind of built now to where if it fails, it won't hurt itself as much. So there's a lot of learning and just how could I build the most bare bones thing without knowing how to do anything. So learned a lot in that process.
Jim asks, how long did it take to make the robot?
So it happened in phases. The main body, the mouth, and the eyes probably took me about, because this is my free time project, probably hit 4 months or so to get some mouth movement and talking going. The arms came later because I realized that, couldn't control 5 servos with 1 Pi. So there's a servo control board in there. So I would say this project, I mean, it's still kind of ongoing. I've been working on it for about 11 months total, here and there. So just little bits here and there. I was trying to do a little bit every day just to kind of throw a little bit more into the fire. I noticed that if you do just a little bit something every day, something big kind of happens months later. So just been kind of, feeding it.
That's
yeah.
That's fantastic. Tell my 9-year-old that every time we're working on a robot, if it's like, oh, we didn't get the whole thing done today, move on
I'm
to something
flattered.
else.
Keep going.
It's just brilliant how you have the articulation. Are you going to, or have you already shared any of the plans for this on GitHub?
So I haven't shared the bot programming itself on GitHub because it's so niche. I don't see a whole army of robots on Twitch yet. I didn't really want to support it either just yet. It's also my thrashing zone, so I try to do all my experiments here, and then when I go to work, it's like, hey, I know everything I'm supposed to do, and I don't destroy my things at work, only my things at home. So I haven't had the bot, but the camera is available on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub/HotSparkLab, there's a project for the camera. I will say there is a bug. So when I run it through Balena IO, like the bot, so Balena is really good for the bot, really good for services. I noticed for the high intensity of the camera feed, it seems to freeze once in a while, and I haven't figured that out yet. I bet you there's an expert at Balena that's just be like, oh yeah, just move this switch, it'll work great. So I didn't follow up with them. There's a little example of how to do that on your own on a Pi without this Balena aspect. But yeah, that's there, and other experiments will be posted there eventually.
Cool. So when do you do your streams, and when is a good time? I guess people should go to Twitch TV /HotSparkLab. How often do you do your streams?
Sure. Well, since I do have a full-time job and I have a family, family first protocol is always in effect. So sometimes it's like once a month, but right now I'm shooting for schedule every Thursday evening at 9 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. That's my goal right now. Used to be on Saturdays, but my wife is becoming very good with her she's a financial guru, and she's fixed our finances. She's fixing friends' finances. Really good on Saturdays now. So now I kind of moved everything to Thursday so that she has a little bit more room to breathe on the weekends. And yeah, it seems to be going okay so far at that time.
Wow, fantastic. This is a truly amazing robot, one of a kind. I've never seen anything like it. And the way that you've used NeoPixels on this is amazing. I want to know how you figured out like how to make the mouth like so human-like. Did you do some reading on expressions?
I've always been interested in creating chatting robots. So I've created a few marketing campaigns and other chat bots. Back when artificial intelligence markup language was a thing, AIML, I was creating little marketing projects like talking dogs and other things for different marketing things. But Amazon came out with this service called Polly. So not only can you get the audio file, this really nice sounding audio file, and all sorts of different languages and accents and whatnot. It also can give you a list of speech marks, which, this mouth movement happens at this specific time, and then you can go through and make sure, okay, each movement is assigned a mouth position, so it can just speak. The hard part was trying to figure out the best way to go about it. So it's being presented in Open Broadcaster software as a transparent layer that plays the audio, and that way I can set HotSpark's audio levels separately from everything, like a mic. And then when it talks, it's sending signals back to the server, and then it's broadcasting it to all the things that want to listen. So if I wanted to have other talking robots in the room, you could, or it's just the other server on the same device is gonna listen to it. So I know that's kind of like but a lot of things moving around, but it worked out in the end. It's pretty stable.
Fantastic.
Is a room full of robots on the table?
No, I'm working on this other thing right now. So if you can see it, this is my first enclosure project, so you can see HotSpark is not enclosed really. and this is my first thing. I drilled holes. I'm so proud of these align buttons.
Oh, I know how hard that is.
I went through, this is the fourth case I went through and didn't break. This is number 4 worked. Number 1, 2, and 3, I used a drill bit the size I needed and ended up having to use a step drill bit. I know that's a little off topic, but anyway, I'm doing other things, not so much robot things now, but this project got me really interested in a lot of other electronics-y things, and I feel a little bit more confident in that area.
Fantastic. That is so awesome. I'm so honored to see that. Now, I wanted to take a couple minutes for Les to show, and we're going to break this piece out for those watching live. We're going to break this piece out so that people can watch it separately after the fact. So the rest of us are gonna be quiet for a minute. I'm gonna focus on Les, and then we'll get back to Ash and some other things, because Les has achieved something really timely and amazing, which is he's managed to install Windows 11 on a Raspberry Pi 4. And so I want Les to talk us through that, and the rest of us will mute and let Les show us. So Les, let's talk Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi.
Rightio, yes, Windows 11 on Raspberry Pi 4. This has taken quite a bit of work to go in today. This is the 5th attempt to get it to work. I'll talk about that later on. But enough of looking at me. Let's have a look at Windows. So let's just wake it up. So this is live. This is coming from Raspberry Pi 4 running Windows 11, the insider preview that came out about 24 hours ago. This has been patched to work on a Raspberry Pi 4, and it works pretty well. So as you can see, we've got the hardware, so the task manager up on the screen. We can see I've got an 8 gig Pi. I'll move the mouse over there so you can see it. It's an 8 gig Pi. I'm using roughly 2.3 gig of memory, and I've got one web page open, obviously tomshardware.com. CPU utilization, not too bad, about 4 to 10%. It does ramp up when I start doing more intensive tasks. So if I was to open the start menu, for example, we can see the peaks are going up, so it's using more of the CPU, but it runs quite smoothly. I'm quite impressed. So we have the information screens popping up. We've got the store that works as well. And this is all running on a Raspberry Pi 4 stock speed, so 1.5 gig with 8 gig of RAM. It does work on lower models, such as the Raspberry Pi 4 2 gig. It will work, but there'll be some caveats. It's going to be slow because less RAM. 4 gigs pretty much a sweet spot for price versus performance. So I've been playing around with this for about 2 hours after getting it to work. So the install process for this, I'm going to detail this all in the tutorial so you go step by step. But the basics are, you go to a website and follow the links on there to go to a download page to choose which version you want to download. In this case, Windows 11 Professional. It downloads a .cmd file, so a command that's run. The command is run in the terminal, or the command prompt. And it downloads and sets up and patches an ISO image. And this ISO image can then be written using the Windows on Raspberry Pi tool created by Amir Dahan. He did the Windows 10 tool, which I did last year as well, how to install Windows 10 on Raspberry Pi 4 there. You use that tool to install it onto an SSD. You then make sure your Raspberry Pi 4 is able to boot from USB 3. Plug it in. And after about 15-20 minutes of it setting up and configuring all the different bits and pieces, you're left with a Windows 11 install ready to go. So it runs pretty well. So it's not going to be desktop performance, granted. But if I scroll around our webpage, you can see stuff loads in. And it works pretty well. Let's open up a review. Oh look, Adafruit Trinky QT 2040 review. Let's click on that. That's a nice little board, that. So you can see it loads pretty well. I haven't pre-cached this page at all. This is fresh. And everything works well. There's no real issues. Stuff pops in, but that's to be expected. And it works just like a standard Windows desktop. I can install applications. I need to check a few things out here and there. I will install Visual Studio Code and the Arduino IDE, see if they work properly. They did work with Windows 10 I tested last year, and I want to see if it stands with Windows 11 this year. So what doesn't work with this insider build, and remember this is 24 hours old, so it's going to be really rough. Sound is not working on HDMI. It works on the 3.5mm audio jack, the TRRS jack, and Wi-Fi does not work. Also, I tried overclocking the CPU earlier and it crashed completely. But luckily, I could go back into the BIOS. When the Pi boots up for Windows, I can press the escape key, and that will bring up a very limited BIOS of sorts, and I can edit the speed of the CPU, how much RAM. By default, it only recognizes 3 gigabytes of RAM, but you can tell it to recognize more than 3 gig in the BIOS. There is a caveat to that. Again, it does break a few USB things. But I tested a USB webcam earlier, and that worked fine. In fact, I can use that webcam now to show you how I've got it set up on a desk. So this is the Argon M.2 case, which we reviewed last October, if I remember correctly. Lovely case, active and passive cooling. It's also got underneath, you see the red light just there, an M.2 SATA port inside, which you connect via USB 3. And that means I can boot this from a SATA SSD and give myself plenty of speed for Windows in this case, but I've also had Twister OS running. You may have seen an old podcast where I ran Twister OS with Half-Life on here and played that live and pretty much died. But all running from the SATA SSD. Now, it works with this. This is the original drive I was testing with, an Orkey drive, which is just a USB caddy with SATA inside it. Did not work on 4 attempts, no matter what images I used. But it worked first time with this, so perhaps there's something to do with some sort of USB controller for SATA that it doesn't understand in this one, but does in that one. But all in all, it is a really nice Windows experience on a Raspberry Pi. It's better, I would say, than Windows 10 last year, which ran decently well, but still felt a bit sluggish at times. But this, I can use it like a normal desktop. I'm not going to sit there and use Adobe Photoshop or anything intensive with it, but for Windows applications, basics, yeah, this is pretty good.
So wow, that's really impressive. So we'll cut the video there when we cut this out for people who want to see what Windows is like. But that's pretty neat that you can do it. Not that we're saying you should do it, because frankly, Raspberry Pi OS runs a lot better.
Yes.
But people always ask, can you run Windows? And we have shown the past that you can, in theory, run Windows 10. That actually looks like it runs better. In fact, it looks like Windows 11 might be running better on your Raspberry Pi than it's running on my Windows laptop, on my PC laptop right now, where I installed it yesterday, and it seems quite sluggish, despite an 8th gen core. We have a question. Does Win 11 use multiple cores on the Raspberry Pi?
Well, Peabody 1929, if you have a look on the screen here, I'll just get it back, because I accidentally clicked on the wrong thing before. There it is, using all 4 cores. So it is using the quad cores of the Raspberry Pi 4.
Neat. I'm curious, have you tried the Microsoft Store on it and tried installing anything from that and see what happened?
Not as yet, no, because we were time limited after spending quite a lot of time getting it set up.
Yeah,
I wanted to make sure we had something that worked on the show for a change.
Yeah, no question about it. I mean, this is Windows, just to be clear, this is Windows on ARM, so anything that required x86 wasn't going to run on it anyway. Just like if you have one of those notebooks with a Qualcomm Snapdragon processor in it, which there are a few, that you also can run you also have a limited selection of apps. But pretty neat. Chris, do you think you'll be running HotSpark on Windows 11 anytime soon?
I'm not sure. I like new glassy, like maybe OPS and my desktop, of course. The Pi itself, no.
Yeah. I mean, it's if I was coming up with a new catchphrase for Tom's Hardware, I don't know what other people would think of it. It'd be like, because we can, or do it because you can, not because you should. And installing Windows on a Raspberry Pi is do it because you can, not because you should, right? Like there's no good reason to do it, just to see that it can be done. So we will show folks. Les is working on a tutorial to show folks how you can do it. We don't necessarily recommend you use it for anything, but hey, you can see that it can be done. It's not practical like some other things. So speaking of things that are practical, Ash, you have been working on with some voice recognition technology, correct?
Yeah, I wanted to talk about this because of our special guests that we have today. Not all of us are lucky enough to have something worthy of a place in Jim Henson's Creature Shop to interact with. But if you want to talk to your Raspberry Pi, then you should look into using voice assistants. And there are a few commercial options out there, even some open source ones that will let you add voice control and AI speech recognition to your Raspberry Pi projects. So I found a few examples that I wanted to share with everyone watching and listening, but there are, of course, more options out there. These seem to be the biggest ones right now, which usually means you get more community support. So that's why I'm bringing these ones up. So the first one and biggest one I wanted to point out is Google Assistant Service. It's basically a way to add the features that you get from Google Home to your Raspberry Pi. You can talk to your Raspberry Pi if you have a microphone. It can connect to the internet if your Pi is connected to the internet, and control things if you have like a smart home, maybe set the temperature, anything that you have connected to your Pi. Maybe it's interacting with HotSpark or something just like it. So that's they have an SDK. I'm sorry. There's a train coming up behind me, or not behind me, but passing by if you can hear it. But the SDK works with Python, and you can find more information out about it on the Google website if you just search for Google Assistant Service. And the second biggest one that you're probably going to come across is the Alexa voice service. And that SDK is also available on the Amazon website. We have an article by maker Carolyn Dunn on Tom's Hardware, actually, that talks about how you can set up Alexa on the Raspberry Pi. She used a speaker, and you will need a microphone to interact with it. But you should definitely check out our guide if you wanted to look into setting up Alexa on the Raspberry Pi. And the Alexa voice service platform was also used on, I have to plug another website I write for, How True. It was used to power this for Alexa project in which you can talk to a Furby and it's just Alexa talking back to you. So if you want to take things a step further, you can always put your Raspberry Pi inside of a Furby. But let's say you don't want to go the commercial route. You don't want to use the Alexa voice service. You don't want to use Google Assistant service because both of these platforms involve relaying audio through their servers, if I'm not mistaken, for AI recognition. So you may want to look at something like Mycroft. And it's an open source option for voice assistant platforms, and they have a special edition for the Raspberry Pi called Pycroft. And you can read about that on mycroft.ai, their website, and that's MYCROFT. So those are the ones that I found I thought you guys should check out. I know it's not HotSpark, but it is a lot of fun. And I wanted to know, what do you guys think? Have you worked with voice assistants in the past? Which ones do you like? Or are there any that you've heard about that you want to try?
I want to try Mycroft now. I have set up previously on my on this Adafruit, this Raspberry Pi with the Adafruit hat here. I have set up Google Assistant on it, and I think I've also set up Amazon. And similar. It comes with a thing you can put speakers in, right? So that's cute, and they have great tutorials on Adafruit about how to do this with this hat. And what's interesting about this hat is you have a push button to do it when you set it up, so it's not always listening, which is good because frankly I'm kind of freaked out by the always listening devices. Although I have to admit I have a couple in my house because my family likes them.
I should have mentioned Ryder's phone, because he solved that problem. He had an old rotary phone that you pick up instead of saying "Hello Google." You just start speaking.
Yes, we have another tutorial on our site from Ryder that tells you how to take an old-fashioned phone and turn it into an assistant, which is great because I personally really don't like this always listening stuff that goes on, but It seems like what Chris should do is Chris should make his own assistant like HotSpark, because I would rather have that one that has that emotes like that. I think that would be really cool.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's eventually going to retire as an advanced spell and say. So you can ask it to say a lot of words, I'm guessing. And possibly, maybe we could set it over on the side. It could read the news for us.
Yeah, what that reminds me of a little bit, and yours is so much better, did any of you ever use Carrots? Does that ring a bell with any Karotz? Also previously known as the Baz tag. It was a ringing a bell.
Yeah.
Anyone in the audience ring a bell for? That was I thought it was really cute. Internet connected rabbit. It was a plastic rabbit that was about the same height or so as HotSpark, and it had ears that moved when it talked instead of the eyebrows, and it also had like a light in its stomach that kind of flashed while it's talking, and it was before all of the digital assistants, and it would like read you the news, and it had a bunch of little rabbits you could rub against its stomach because they were ARFID tags, and they could like make it it didn't have a lot of movement. It was just the ears. So primarily it would just do things like read your RSS feed or give you the weather or maybe read your email. It was, it didn't have super information because it was made by this tiny company that didn't have the power of Google or Amazon behind it. But it was a cute idea, and I remember that the first version of it they gave me had a British accent, and I loved it. And then they changed it, and it had some American accent. I hated it, but because it sounded a little bit like yours. So really cool. I think one person asks, "Is it unmovable?" I'm not sure what that means. I mean, the arms move.
Oh, so portable, perhaps?
Yeah.
So currently it's sitting in a craft crate that has green screen on the inside of it. So with a little bit of padding, I could take the bot out. So you take the bot off the bottom servo, or actually you could take the servo out too. But yeah, you could move the thing to another, like say an event, but I don't see it being in the car.
Fair enough. Well, we've had a really exciting show today, and I thank Chris and HotSpark for coming. For those of you who saw the previous description of it,
this was so much fun. Thank you for having us.
For those of you who saw the previous description of it, where I said we were going to talk about 3D printing a little bit, we had more important stuff. We can talk about 3D printed stuff next week after. My son and I just got a 3D printer, and you can see that we're doing such a great job that Mario has no head. Anyway, so we can talk about 3D printing stuff for your Pi another time. But I want to thank everybody for listening and watching. As always, you can find us here at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. British time on Tuesdays, and of course, always on YouTube and Facebook. Thanks so much, everyone, and we will talk to you next time. Bye.
Thank you.